All right. Okay, to get started this morning, we are going to jump into talking about the peer review. And so this is what this looks like. When we do a peer review, the idea, and I kind of mentioned this in our WhatsApp, but the idea of a peer review is to be able to give you some positive feedback, and then you have a chance to look at somebody else and give feedback. But it's not just positive, because the only way we can improve is if we have constructive criticism. And when we say criticism, we don't mean negativism. Does that make sense? And so looking at it, being able to have somebody look at it. And what I love about each of you, you are all in a different sphere of what your one big message is, what your outcomes are. And so each one of you could be, that audience, right? That you could be able to take fresh eyes at it, because I remember when Angela Ingo was doing her course, she's like, I have been looking at this for so long. I don't even know anymore. I need to know what it looks like to somebody else, right? And that, especially when it's content that we have been working with for so long. And so I'm going to show you the peer review. I think I sent one over to one of you last night because I'm like, oh, I have all of somebody's. I'm going to send them the peer review, and then we'll just talk about how that's going to go. I know it's kind of going past this, like our date, but I know it will be beneficial for each of you to be able to go, okay, somebody's going to look at this with fresh eyes. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you the peer review. Okay, I believe it's this one. All right, hold on, because I may be showing, okay, are you seeing this, the course peer review evaluation? Okay. All right, so I'm going to send this to you in a PDF. You can just print it off. If you have Word, I can send it in Word. But basically what you're going to do is I'm going to send you, so some of you have sent me because it's not in your course platform yet, or you're getting there, it's not published yet. So you send it to me in an email that said, or a Google Doc, and said, okay, here's the topic, here's the question, here's the video that goes with it. Okay, and I'll send that on, and I'll send this on with you as well. When you're doing it, you're not going to know who's evaluating necessarily, but you'll know who you're evaluating, because that's important. So just put the name of the course here. And then we kind of took some of this this is adjusted a little bit. It's going to look familiar if you've done Connie's speaking, or you've looked at the 5 Ps that we talked about at the retreat or in the guidebook. And the reason why is some of that is similar, and some of those are a little bit different. So the first one is we want to make this simple, because it could be a peer review where it's super detailed, and that's just going to be overwhelming to both of you. Okay, so the first one is looking at your overall presence, and Connie calls it the 5 Ps, but I narrowed it down to 3 that relate to the course. So the first one is pace, right? How is it? Is it interesting? Are there highs and lows? Did you have different things? Laugh, cry, think, right? Just think of when you listen to a speaker, especially in a church setting, and go, all right, we can tell when somebody's got we want a little bit of dynamic, right? We also don't want it to be, I've got to hurry in it. We get nervous and we speak really fast, or maybe our energy is really low and we're really slow. We don't want to put people to sleep. Okay. Now, some people like me, I'll listen to a course and I'll put it on double speed, right, to get the information. But you want to make sure you're not speaking at double speed, or that you're also not at slow speed. Does that make sense? But it's natural. It's natural for you, because we all have different energy. Okay, the next one is pitch, right? Don't stay monotone. If you tell a story, you make a point, that you might have variation in pitch. And then a big one is polish. Does the course have a polished appearance? Now, if you're looking, some of you may be able to, we'll send it to you in, like I know Angela Myers, she's going to send hers already in her platform, okay, in Thinkific, and she's going to give you access to that. And so you want to just look, at the slides. We're looking at the slides. We're looking at the branding. Does it look polished? Is the video quality good? Right? Does the sound quality good? If you were to get it, like, okay, this is definitely a polished course. And some of us will know that we might say, oh, we might need to shift it a little bit, but a lot of it is looking at those slides. Are they interesting to look at? That kind of thing. Tamara, what's your question?
So my question is, if for example, I have it in Teachable right now, and my question is, do you want me to do a screenshot of what it looks like in Teachable? Because even if I give you the link, it's not allowing, like you tried to access it and you couldn't. So I would
Because it
have
said
to
it wasn't
upload it to
published
YouTube.
yet. Like you would have to publish it and give me a coupon code or something.
Oh.
So that's an option. Another option is, but also when I'm looking at Polish, I'm looking at your presentation. So if
Oh.
you have slides, you know, we don't want it to just be like white background and like, we want it to look like it's branded. Does that make sense? It's branded. Maybe that your background, it's not looking like I'm sitting in front of my messy living room, you know, with all my kids' stuff around me. Does that make sense? So kind of that polished look. So
that especially would not work for Angela's.
right, Angela, and go, okay. That was so but yeah, but that's what we're looking at. Does it look like you're credible? Does that make sense? So that polished look to it. And some of you may not have slides, and that's okay if it's just you videoing yourself, or if it's like a 5-day challenge where you don't have videos, you know, do your pictures look, do they look professional? Does that make sense? Do they look clean? Does that make sense what I'm saying by a polished appearance? So, because we know that when you put it in something like MemberVault or Thinkific or Teachable, because of their platform, they're going to make it look course type thing. So we're looking for your presentation mate. Does that make sense? Does that clarify that a little bit more? And I would suggest that when you get that, if you would like us to look at it, kind of like what Angela Ingo did, say, hey, you can get in here and just look at this. Will you just look it over real quick and have everybody just, does it look right? Right. Okay. So then we hop onto content. You're going to ask, did you learn something new? Now, this is why there might be something like, okay, I've already known this, but was there something that you got out of it that was new? This is a big one because we've talked about this a lot. Can you tell what the pain points are, and are they addressed successfully? Okay. And I should probably switch the order of this, because then there are clear solutions for each pain point. And then the other one is there an assignment or an outcome for each lesson? Like when you listen to this, you're going to learn how to do this. Does that make sense? So, and part of that is either it's an assignment that they're going to write something down. Maybe they have a quiz question that they answer, or perhaps it's the outcome is that they should be able to add, they know they're going to go add plants to a space. Does that make sense? So that's a clear outcome of what they're going to do. Did it provide evidence of why that's a good solution? That could be a testimonial. That could be, you know, what happened when they did this, or maybe it's a statistic, anything like that. Okay. And then the flow of the content made sense. It built upon each other, right? And then the other, couple things that we've talked about is, as a course participant, did you have the opportunity to share your learning? Like, hey, please send me a before and after picture. Or did they have a question that said, what did you love? What was something? Does that make sense? We talked about that at the end. And maybe you say that in your presentation, but if you haven't said that in one of your videos, then that might be something that you'll know that afterwards you're going to make sure you add it to your course. Does that make sense? Like where it has a question. Do you know how to stay connected? Like, do you have a community? How do you stay involved with your community? Do you know what your next step will be? So what's the next step? Is it a call with somebody? Is it a consultation? Is it buying the next course? Is it writing your purpose statement? Does that make sense? So knowing where are we leading? Are they leading you somewhere? Does that make sense? And was there an invitation issued at the end? Like, I invite you to do this. Does that make sense? Do you feel like we covered a lot of what we did? Okay. And then, so you're going to just do it from 1 to 10. 10 is high, 1 is lowest, and then comments down here. And encourage, if there's something you loved, put that down here. I always like to do a little plus or something that says plus. I love the slides you used. They were clean. They were bright colors. I love your tone. I love your stories or whatever. If you have a suggestion, I highly recommend using our YIPS formula, right? Have you thought about, I would encourage you might want to consider perhaps this, something to think about. Does that make sense? So that way.
What did you just call that?
YIPS. I don't remember if we talked about it at your retreat, but this last one we talked about YIPS. It's when you give coaching. So it's Y is you might want to consider ... And then I is, I'm trying to remember what I is. I just said it, but I'm like, P,
Invite.
what?
Is it invite? I invite.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I invite you to look at this. P is perhaps you might consider, or perhaps you could do this, or have you thought about that kind of thing. And then S is something to consider. It's just basically putting it that way instead of saying, this is really ugly, right? Do you know what I mean? It's like, hey, have you thought about this? Or something to consider. And you might just say, hey, I didn't notice this. Could this be in here? And just be specific. If you're like, hey, I was confused on this point. Okay. Now, when you're doing this peer review, some of your courses are longer than others. I'm not expecting you to go through the entire course detail by detail. Okay. I would really consider you're going to get in that initial video, whatever, or if like Angela Myers has hers all laid out, she might say, okay, this is one I really want you to look at, or just kind of look at the flow, because you can kind of see the flow of somebody's thing. Okay, first we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like you could look at those points and see if they're built on, and then look at a couple of their videos and listen to how they sound. Does that make sense? I know Angela Ingo, when she was looking at her course initially, said, could you look at these couple modules, because I want to know how my energy is, because I was feeling low energy. Is it reflected? Does that make sense? So, but I want you to look at the beginning. I also want you to look at the last video to see if they have the invitation in there. If that's, or the question, if it's, I invite you to join my Facebook group, stay connected on social media, join, right? If it's not in there, then that's okay. It's just a comment that might say, oh, make sure I add that at the end of my course. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I've recorded my last one, but after I did it, I'm like, something is missing. And I finally figured out what was missing, but I need to now re-record it. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And that's okay. That's okay. Because you're just, this gives you an experience to peer review and then to also receive feedback. So however you have it. And again, like I said, some of you have whipped this out really quickly because it was like, okay, I'm feeling this, or it's like, okay, now I'm going to have new eyes on it. And so thank you for being brave to let people look at your stuff, because it can be scary, but remember, we're in a safe place. This is what we're doing. We're safe. If you don't have yours ready yet, that's okay. You can still participate in this. If you're like, okay, I want to get something out so somebody can review it. I know any one of us would probably be willing to be like, yeah, I can quickly look that over. So it's okay if it's like, okay, it's not there yet. Like poor Marnie, like her voice disappeared over the week, over this week. She and I talked at the beginning of the week, and by the end of the week, she's like, okay, like, I am going to be reading, you're going to have to read my lips. So that won't work. But even if you have it, and Marnie, this might be something to consider, is if you have an outline of what your first few lessons are, so we can kind of see the flow and the sample.
I was wondering, I've done this course 5 times, so I actually have recordings of each group. I'm happy to just send one of the courses. Does that make sense?
That would be perfect. And so if you would just have so that's what I know Angela Ingo wants us to look at her 5-day purpose challenge, and Tamara has her course. And what they did is they just either emailed it to me and just said, here's day 1, like the topic and the question, and then the link to the recording. And just know it's all confidential in here. And so
that's my only concern, is that on the courses that got women in there that share about them. So I would just ask that you just leave it there. And I also had finished the 3-day challenge. So I'd probably put the 3-day challenge in at least course 1 for you, whoever's to look at.
That would be awesome. Just to have the topic and then the video, because what they're really going to be looking is they're not going to be listening to people's feedback necessarily. They're going to be watching you teach the course and looking at your presentation of it and your content. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that way, hopefully that helps you feel a little bit better. It's like, as long as you have something, because then as you go into this next course, that will help you prepare to to do that. So,
I'll do that.
I
okay.
wanted to mention too, mine is not really a course. It's a course, but it's more instructions. So I wish I would have had this beforehand because I was doing everything blind and very messy. Just get it out there.
That's
Don't
what it,
script
yeah.
it, just do it. And I'm like, now that you
Angela.
guys are gonna look at it, I'm like, I meant to redo the video someday, but I probably never will. So mine is not like a pain solution, a pain point and a solution and then a story. I don't have all that.
And
But
that's
it's what
something
I
we
felt
can
like my
talk about,
people needed.
Angela.
Yeah, they needed to know how to use it. It's how to use something. It's not
Yeah.
motivating you to use it. It's, so I don't know.
But
It's
they
messy.
can look,
It's
but
messy.
they can, right. But they can look at how your presentation
Mhm.
and also
Ugh.
how you teach. And that's okay. That's the thing. Most of us already know, like, oh my gosh, I already know this, and this. So be kind to yourself, but it also gives us a chance to review somebody else. Cause you're probably going to do something. They'll be like, oh, I didn't even think about that. I can add that into my course.
Yeah.
Like you have a fantastic download that somebody might be like, oh, I really love this idea.
Mhm.
Right. And then they'll be able to give you ideas of how you can do that. And I've been meaning to talk to you anyway about your course too and say, okay, let's now that we've done this and it's good. That's the thing. We wanted you to just get it out there.
That's all I did.
That's what
Messy.
honestly what all of us have been doing is just like
Messy.
get our
Mhm.
stuff out there and then we learn about all the things that we should do
Yeah.
differently.
But Angela, yours is like, I felt peace when I watched yours. I think I'm going to make people feel hyper.
Yeah, but you know what?
So
It's all about your
I
personality.
don't
too.
exude peace. I
It's about
exude,
your
come on.
personality and your way of like presenting things to the
We're
world.
just all
So,
different. We're all different. So
you know,
it's
it
messy and mine's instructive. I now I look back now that you're mentioning these things, I think, man, I had great stories I could have used. Why didn't I use stories?
But and that's something we can add in there. And that's something that's easy to add in there, like as a lesson. So like, for instance, in what we do, sometimes we'll have that module, that main teaching module, and then we'll have just a little extra video that you can embed in there. Sometimes it says, now hear from a parent. Here's a parent's experience, right? And
Yes.
one thing, and we can talk about how to do that, and maybe somebody can have some suggestions of how you could add that in there.
Mhm.
And I mean, even if you want to send it back and you want them to do a Marco Polo back and forth, that's fine too. And say, hey, I really loved this. Would that be better to have a Marco Polo where they say, hey, I've got some things, but I want to explain it because it's hard to write it out. That's fine too. To say, hey, here's a couple things, but I was just going to send them anonymously. So that way you feel like, oh, I could be honest, but it's up to you guys. I feel like if you're like, no, I feel trust here, then I'm good. So like, it's up to you how you feel. So I don't see anybody here going like pointing and going, this was not, do you know what I mean? Like, I don't feel that with any of you here. So, and Angela Myers, I just want to say, because I've been watching yours because I'm using it, and give yourself a little more grace. I think you're harder on yourself than we are. We're always much harder on ourselves, because I've watched it and I'm honestly like, oh, I need to be more like Angela in my parenting. Like, frankly, you are the right person to be teaching this. And I'm like, oh,
I'm the right person because my parenting was not perfect. I'm sorry. My computer's shaking. My roof is shaking. Things are falling past the windows. I'm kind of going,
we
"Ah."
can't even see it. You probably feel more.
You don't hear that? Oh my gosh. They're right overhead. So they weren't there, Tamara, yesterday. They were very kind not to be right overhead.
Nice.
So
Oh, good. Okay, so that's the peer review. Any other questions on that? Okay, I think if you have time to look over it, I know, like saying, okay, get it done today. Like, that's not enough time for some of us, depending on your day. Is by Monday okay to just get it back? And then I'll just forward it to them. Is that going to be enough time? Or if it's a couple days after that, that's okay. I would just encourage you in the next several days, maybe by Wednesday. Is Wednesday a better time to give you that time to like a few days to get it back? And then that way it's for your personal feedback to take back and go, okay, especially as we're polishing up our courses, our 5-day challenges, that kind of thing. Does that work? And so if you can get it to me, like Marnie, or if you can get your stuff to me just by today and just email it to me, and then I'll just forward it on, just like I did with Tamara's, and I'll do that with Angela, because I got Angela Ingo's last night too. So does that sound okay?
did you get mine?
I did, and I will forward yours on as well. So
Like my whole house is coming apart. Okay, sorry.
You are good. Okay, so that's the peer review.